The blue lights on the Zephyrian council chamber walls blinked faster than usual. Ambassador Kethver stood at the center of the room, his forearms shaking as he prepared to send the most important message in galactic history. Around him, representatives from dozens of peaceful worlds watched with fear in their eyes for 3 long years. The Vorthok Empire had moved through space like a disease. They came to each world with the same demand: surrender or die. Most worlds chose surrender. The few that tried to fight were burned to ash within days. The Vorthax were born killers from a world where only the strongest survived. They had weapons that could crack planets and soldiers that felt no fear. Kethver looked at the star map floating above the table. Red dots marked every world the Vorthoks had taken. Blue dots showed the free worlds that remained. There were far more red dots than blue ones now. Soon there would be no blue dots left at all. "You've tried everything," said Chancellor Ethera, her crystal skin dim with sadness. "We offered them trade agreements. We tried to make peace. We even formed the Defense Alliance with 47 worlds working together. Nothing stops them." The other ambassadors nodded. The Krell delegate, a tall being with smooth gray skin, spoke next. "My world has the best shields in the galaxy. The Vorthax broke through them in 6 hours. Our cities are empty now. Our people work in their minds." A small, furry creature from the Whisker world squeaked in fear. "They ate our sacred trees. They ate them while we watched. They laughed when we cried." Kethver activated the long-range communications array. "There is one more option," he said quietly. "The deep space scanners found a new world 3 cycles ago, a planet called Earth in the Sol system. The beings there call themselves humans." "What do we know about them?" asked Utara. "Very little," Kethver admitted. "They have basic space travel. They have radio signals. Seem to fight each other a lot, but they also work together sometimes. Their planet is ... unusual? Unusual how?" Kethver pulled up the data on Earth. The other ambassadors gasped when they saw it. "Their world tries to kill them every day," he said. "Earthquakes that level cities. Storms that destroy everything in their path. Volcanoes that block out the sun. Wild animals that hunt in packs. Diseases that spread like fire. The temperature swings from hot enough to cook flesh to cold enough to freeze blood solid." "How do they survive?" whispered the Whisker delegate. "That's what makes them interesting," Kethver said. "They don't just survive. They grow in number. They build bigger cities. They explore dangerous places. They seem to enjoy fighting against impossible odds." Chancellor Ethera looked thoughtful. "Do you think they might help us?" "I don't know," Kethver said. "But we have nothing left to lose. If we don't try something new, the Vortex will own the entire galaxy within a year." Far across space, on a ship called the Valiant, Admiral Jake Peterson was having a very different kind of day. He stood on the bridge drinking coffee and reading reports from Earth Command. The coffee was terrible, the reports were boring, and he was starting to think this patrol mission would be the most peaceful 3 months of his career. The Valiant was humanity's newest deep space exploration ship. It carried 200 crew members and enough supplies to stay away from Earth for 6 months. Their job was simple: explore new star systems, look for interesting planets, and try not to run into any alien life forms that might want to eat them. Admiral called Lieutenant Commander Lisa Martinez from her station. "I'm picking up something strange on the long-range sensors." Peterson set down his coffee and walked over to her console. Martinez was the ship's communications officer and xenobiologist. If anyone was going to find alien life, it would be her. "What kind of strange?" "It's a signal," she said, adjusting her headset. "Multiple signals, actually. They're coming from different directions, but they're all saying the same thing." "Can you translate it?" Martinez frowned at her screens. "I think so. The computer is having trouble with some of the words, but the basic message is clear." Looked up at Peterson with wide eyes. "They're asking for help, sir. Military help." Peterson felt his heart start beating faster. First contact with alien life was something every human dreamed about, but they had always assumed it would happen slowly, carefully, with lots of planning and preparation. They hadn't expected aliens to call them asking for soldiers. "Put it on the main screen," Peterson ordered. The The bridge crew gathered around as Martinez played the translated message. The voice was electronic, but somehow they could hear the fear and desperation behind the words. Unknown species of Salthri, we require immediate military assistance. Our worlds burn. Our people suffer. The Vorthok Empire spreads across the galaxy. Like a plague, we have tried diplomacy. We have tried defense. Nothing works. If you have weapons, if you have soldiers, if you have any way to fight, please come. We will share our technology. We'll give you anything you ask. Just please help us. This may be our last transmission. Please respond if you possess the capability for warfare. The bridge was quiet for a long moment. Captain Ben Rodriguez, Peterson's second in command, was the first to speak. Sir, do we respond? Peterson looked around at his crew. These were good people, explorers, scientists, engineers. They had signed up to discover new worlds and make peaceful contact with alien civilizations. They hadn't expected to be asked to fight in a galactic war, but as he looked at their faces, he saw something that made him proud to be human. He didn't see fear or hesitation. He saw determination. He saw people who heard strangers crying for help and wanted to do something about it. Martinez, send a response, Peterson ordered. Tell them we received their message. Tell them we're coming. Sir, interrupted Major Steve Collins, the ship's security chief. We don't know anything about these aliens. We don't know who they is. Are or what they're fighting. This could be a trap. Peterson nodded. You're right, Major. This could be the stupidest thing humanity has ever done. But if there are people out there who need help, and we can provide that help, then we have to try. That's what makes us human. He turned to the navigation station. Rodriguez, plot a course for the source of that transmission, best possible. Speed. Yes, sir, Rodriguez said, his fingers flying over the controls. Course laid in, we can be there in 36 hours. Make it 30, Peterson said, and send a message back to Earth Command. Tell them we've made contact with alien life, and we're going to war. As the Valiant jumped to faster-than-light speed, none of the crew knew what they were flying toward. They didn't know about the peaceful worlds that had already fallen. They didn't know about the Vorthok Empire's massive fleets and brutal soldiers. They didn't know that they were about to become the most famous humans in galactic history. All they knew was that someone, somewhere, needed help. And humans never walked away from people who needed help. The stars streaked past the viewports as the Valiant raced toward its destiny. In 30 hours, the galaxy would learn what happened. When you asked Deathworlders for help, the Valiant dropped out of faster-than-light speed at the edge of the Zephyr system. Admiral Peterson stood on the bridge, staring at the main screen in horror. This was not what he had expected for humanity's first contact with alien life. Massive. Ships surrounded the third planet like hungry wolves around a wounded deer. Each enemy vessel was the size of a small city, dark metal covered with weapon ports and armor plating. Bright flashes lit up the planet's surface as the alien attackers dropped bombs from orbit. Even from millions of miles away, Peterson could see the glow of burning cities.
How many enemy ships?
Peterson asked. Lieutenant Commander Martinez checked her sensors. 43 large vessels, sir, plus hundreds of smaller craft. And Admiral ... they're huge. The smallest one is twice the size of our ship. Captain Rodriguez whistled low. What have we gotten ourselves into? Before Peterson could answer, Martinez looked up from her console with surprise. Sir, I'm getting a transmission from one of the ships near the planet. It's not from the attackers. Someone else is trying to contact us. Put it through, Peterson ordered. The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at an alien face. The being had smooth, crystal-like skin that reflected light in beautiful patterns, for arms moved gracefully as it spoke. Despite its strange appearance, Peterson could see intelligence and desperate hope in its large, dark eyes. Unknown vessel, the alien said through the computer's translation system. I am Supreme Chancellor Yathera of the Zephyrian Republic. Are you the ones who responded to our call for help? Peterson stepped forward. I am Admiral Jake Peterson of the Earth vessel. Valiant. We received your message and came as fast as we could. The alien's expression changed to something that might have been relief mixed with disbelief. You actually came. We did not dare to hope. But you must understand what you face. The ships attacking my world belong to the Vorthok Empire. Have conquered 47 star systems. Their soldiers are bred for war. They know no mercy. How many people are on your planet? Asked Dr. Amy Watson, the ship's medical officer. 2 billion, Yathera replied. Most are hiding in underground shelters, but the Vorthex are breaking through our defenses. We have perhaps 6 hours before they begin landing troops for the final assault. Peterson looked around his bridge. 200 humans against an enemy fleet that had conquered nearly 50 worlds. The smart thing to do would be to retreat, call for help, and come back with a proper fleet. But 6 hours was not enough time for that, and 2 billion people would be dead or enslaved by then. Chancellor Peterson said,
I need to get you.
And your people to safety. Can you evacuate? Yathera's expression grew even more desperate. There is nowhere to run. The Vorthex have surrounded the system. Their blockade ships will destroy any vessel that tries to leave. Major Collins stepped up beside Peterson. Sir, with respect, we're one ship against an entire enemy fleet. Our weapons are designed to fight other human ships, not whatever those things are carrying. Peterson knew Collins was right. The Valiant was a good ship with a brave crew, but they were not a warship. They had defensive weapons and a small complement of fighters, but nothing that should be able to stand against an empire that had conquered half the galaxy. But as he looked at the alien's face on the screen, Peterson made a decision that would change galactic history. Chancellor, we're going to try something, he said. I need you to send us everything you know about Vorthok ships. Weapons, defenses, tactics, everything. Admiral Yathera said slowly, I do not think you understand. Your ship is very small compared to theirs. It will destroy you in minutes. Peterson smiled grimly. Maybe, but humans have a saying, it's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. Send us that data. Within minutes, Valiant's computers were processing detailed information about Vorthok military technology. Dr. Watson worked with the ship's engineer, Tony Blake, to analyze enemy weapon systems. What they found was both encouraging and terrifying. Good news, Watson reported, is that their technology isn't that much more advanced than ours. Better, yes, but not impossibly so. The bad news is that they have a lot more of it than we do. Blake nodded. Yeah, their ships are built like tanks. Lots of armor, lots of guns, but they're slow, and they seem to follow very predictable attack patterns. Peterson studied the tactical display. Predictable how? Look at their formation, Blake said, pointing to the screen. They're arranged in perfect geometric shapes. They attack in straight lines. They always keep the same distance from each other. It's like they're following a textbook. Lieutenant Commander Martinez looked up from her communication station. Sir, I'm monitoring their radio chatter. It's very formal, very structured. Every order is acknowledged exactly the same way. No improvisation at all. Peterson felt something click in his mind. He had spent 20 years in Earth's military, fighting against enemies who were creative, unpredictable, and desperate. Human warfare was chaotic because humans themselves were chaotic. They adapted, improvised, took crazy risks because their homeworld had taught them that sometimes crazy risks were the only way to survive. Rodriguez Peterson ordered, take us closer to the planet, but don't fly in a straight line. No. We've around, change speed randomly, make us as unpredictable as possible. Sir, Rodriguez asked. Trust me on this, Peterson said, and signal our fighter squadron. Tell them to prepare for launch. But when they go out there, I want them to forget everything they learned in flight school about formation flying. Commander. Rachel Brooks, the ship's fighter squadron leader, looked confused. Forget formation flying. Sir, that goes against every tactical manual we have. Peterson grinned. Exactly. I have a theory about our new enemies. I think they're used to fighting people who follow the rules. See what happens when they meet people who make up the rules as they go along. The Valiant moved toward the planet, its course so erratic that it looked drunk. The Vorthok ships noticed the newcomer immediately. 3 of the smaller enemy vessels broke off from the bombardment and moved to intercept on the lead Vorthok ship. General Krexther studied the approaching human vessel with contempt. It was tiny, barely worth his attention. Like all the other pathetic species they had encountered, these newcomers would be destroyed quickly and efficiently. Standard intercept formation, he ordered his fleet. Destroy the small ship, then return to bombardment duties. The 3 Vorthok vessels moved toward the Valiant in a perfect triangle formation, their weapons charging for what they expected to be a very short battle. Peterson watched them approach and smiled. All right, people, let's show them how humans fight. Brooks, launch fighters. All weapons, prepare to engage. And remember, we're not trying to win this battle through superior firepower. We're going to win it by being too crazy for them to predict. Sir, asked Martinez, what if your theory is wrong? Peterson shrugged. Then we'll be the first humans to die in an alien war. But at least we'll go down fighting. Fighter bay doors opened, and 12 small human fighters shot out into space. Instead of forming up in neat squadrons, they scattered in all directions like startled birds. The Vorthok ships hesitated, confused by the chaotic movement. That moment of hesitation was all the humans needed to begin changing the course of galactic history. General Krexther watched the small human fighters scatter across space like insects fleeing from light. In his 200 years of warfare, he had never seen such a disorganized attack. The enemy pilots seemed to have no plan, no formation, no tactics at all. It was almost insulting. Weapons, officer, he growled into his communicator. Destroy these pests quickly. Use standard interception pattern 7. The Vorthok ships moved into position with mechanical precision. Their weapons turned toward the nearest human fighters, calculating firing solutions based on 3 centuries of successful combat experience. Every alien species they had encountered flew in predictable patterns. The ships moved in straight lines, turned at calculated angles, and retreated when damaged. The Vorthoks had perfect responses for all of these behaviors, but the humans were not doing any of those things. Lieutenant Colonel Matt Johnson led the first wave of fighters from the Valiant. His small craft dove toward the largest Vorthok ship at full speed, then suddenly flipped upside down and spiraled sideways between 2 enemy vessels. The Vorthok gunners fired where they expected him to be, but he was already somewhere else entirely. This is Johnson to all fighters, he called. Over the radio, forget everything you learned in training. These guys expect us to be logical. Let's disappoint them. Pilot Danny Cooper heard the message and grinned inside his helmet. He had grown up in the mountains of Colorado, where surviving meant taking risks that would scare most people. As a teenager, he had jumped motorcycles over canyons just for fun. Flying a fighter against impossible odds felt almost normal. Cooper pointed his ship straight at the side of a Vorthok destroyer and accelerated to maximum speed. The enemy ship's defensive guns tracked him. But instead of pulling away at the last second like any sane pilot would do, Cooper flew directly into the ship's weapon fire. The Vorthok gunners expected him to turn away or explode. Instead, Cooper used his ship's small size to fly between the enemy's laser beams, weaving through the deadly light show like he was dancing. At the last possible moment, he pulled up and fired his missiles directly into the destroyer's bridge. The explosion sent debris flying in all directions. Cooper flew straight through the wreckage, using chunks of metal as cover while he lined up his next attack. The Vorthok ships had no idea how to respond to a pilot who treated flying through explosions like a game on the Valiant's bridge. Peterson watched the battle with growing excitement. His theory was working. The enemy ships were powerful and well-armed, but they were also confused and slow to adapt. Martinez, he called, are you recording this? Yes, sir, she replied. The Vorthoks are using the same attack patterns they've probably used for centuries. Our pilots are doing things they've never seen before. Squadron leader Casey Miller proved Martinez right by pulling a maneuver that should have been impossible. She flew her fighter straight down toward the planet's surface. Using the planet's gravity to accelerate beyond her ship's normal maximum speed, the Vorthok ships followed her, but they couldn't match her velocity. At the last second, Miller pulled up and fired her engines in reverse, using the planet's atmosphere to help her stop. The Vorthok ships shot past her, and she calmly fired missiles into their unprotected rear sections. "How did she do that?" asked Captain Rodriguez. Dr. Watson was studying the sensor readings. "She used the planet's gravity well like a slingshot, then used atmospheric friction to decelerate. It's brilliant, but it should have killed her from the G-forces alone." Peterson nodded. "Humans can survive accelerations that would crush most other species. Our homeworld taught us to handle stress that would break anyone else." The battle was turning in humanity's favor, but Peterson knew they were still outnumbered. More Vorthok ships were breaking off from the planetary bombardment to join the fight. Soon, the humans would face overwhelming odds, but something else was happening that Peterson hadn't expected. The Zephyrian ships that had been hiding near the planet were beginning to move. Chancellor Ythra's voice came over the communication system. "Admiral Peterson," she said, "your pilots are doing the impossible. We are seeing things we never imagined possible. Our ships are joining the battle." Peterson felt a surge of hope. But he also felt worried. "Chancellor, your ships weren't able to fight them before. What's changed?" "We are learning from you," Ythra replied. "You're seeing that the Vortex can be confused, can be surprised. Our captains are beginning to try new tactics." On the Zephyrian command ship, Captain Veltar was having the strangest experience of his long life. For months, his people had tried to fight the Vortex using proper military tactics. They had failed every time because the enemy was stronger and more experienced. But watching the human fighters dance through space like creatures of pure chaos, Veltar began to understand something new. The Vortex were not unbeatable. They were just unprepared for enemies who refused to follow the rules. "Weapons officer," he ordered, "target the lead Vorthok ship, but don't fire in a straight line. Fire in a curve like the humans do."
Nice.
Weapons officer looked confused. "Sir, curved shots are inefficient. They waste energy and reduce accuracy." "Do it anyway," Veltar said. "If it works for the humans, maybe it will work for us." The Zephyrian ship fired its main guns in a spiraling pattern. The shots missed their target, but they confused the Vorthok gunners, who were trying to calculate where the next shots would come from. While the enemy was distracted, Veltar ordered his ship to ram the Vorthok vessel at full speed. The collision destroyed both ships, but it also created a massive explosion that damaged to other Vorthok vessels. More importantly, it showed the other Zephyrian captains that the enemy could be hurt. General Krexler watched his perfect battle plan falling apart and felt something he had never experienced before: confusion. The small human ships were destroying, his forces using tactics that made no sense. Worse, the cowardly Zephyrians were beginning to copy the human madness. "All ships," he ordered, "concentrate fire on the large human vessel. Destroy their command ship, and the smaller ones will surrender." The remaining Vorthok ships turned their massive guns toward the Valiant. Peterson saw them coming and made another decision that would have been considered insane by any military academy in the galaxy. "Rodriguez," he ordered, "take us straight at them. Full speed, no evasive maneuvers." "Sir?" Rodriguez asked. "They expect us to run or dodge," Peterson explained. "Let's do the opposite." The Valiant accelerated directly toward the enemy fleet. The Vorthok ships fired everything they had, but they had calculated their shots assuming the human ship would try to avoid being hit. Instead, the Valiant flew straight through the gaps in their fire pattern. Engineer Tony Blake had been working frantically since the battle began, making modifications to the ship's systems that would have horrified any safety inspector. Now he activated his latest creation, a device that turned the Valiant's main deflector array into a gigantic weapon. "Admiral," he called, "I've rigged the deflector to overload. It should create an electromagnetic pulse that will disable their electronics. But it might also destroy our own ship." Peterson didn't hesitate. "Do it." The Valiant flew directly into the center of the enemy formation and released every bit of energy in its deflector array at once. The electromagnetic pulse spread out in all directions, shutting down power systems on every ship within 100 miles. The difference was that human ships were designed to restart quickly after power failures. Earth's violent weather had taught human engineers to build systems that could survive electrical storms and solar flares. The Vorthok ships, designed for the predictable conditions of conquered space, took much longer to recover. In those crucial minutes while the enemy ships were blind and helpless, the human fighters and their new Zephyrian allies struck with everything they had. When the smoke cleared, half the Vorthok fleet was destroyed or disabled. For the first time in 3 centuries, the Vorthok Empire had been defeated in battle. But more importantly, the galaxy had learned that the creatures from the Death World, called Earth, were very different from every other species among the stars. They were survivors. They were warriors. And they had just changed everything. News of the human victory at Zephyr Prime spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. In the peaceful worlds of the Galactic Council, beings who had lived in fear for years suddenly felt something they had almost forgotten: hope. But in the dark heart of the Vorthok Empire, Emperor Zarthuk felt something much more dangerous than hope. He felt rage. The Emperor stood in his throne room aboard the massive battleship Dominator, staring at the reports from General Krexther. Half of his attack fleet destroyed by a single small ship and its tiny fighters. It was impossible. It was humiliating. It was unacceptable. "Bring me Krexther," the Emperor growled to his guards. When the general appeared, he was missing one arm, and his left eye was covered with medical bandages. His voice shook as he spoke. "My Emperor, the humans fight like nothing we have ever seen. They have no fear of death. They use tactics that make no sense. They turn our own weapons against us." Emperor Zarthuk's claws extended as his anger grew. "You were defeated by primitives from a single world. How is this possible?" "They are not primitives," Krexther said desperately. "Their technology is almost as advanced as ours. But more than that, they think differently. When we expect them to retreat, they attack. When we expect them to attack, they disappear. When we think we have trapped them, they use the trap against us." The Emperor's tail lashed back and forth, a sign of deadly fury among his species. "Then we will not give them a chance to use their tricks. I am taking the Grand Fleet to this Earth system. We will destroy their homeworld and show the galaxy what happens to those who resist the Empire." Krexther's remaining eye widened. "My Emperor, the Grand Fleet has never been used against a single world. 500 ships, 2 million soldiers. Surely that is too much force for one small planet." "No," the Emperor said coldly. "It is exactly the right amount of force. When I am finished with these humans, no other species will ever dare to oppose us again." Back on Earth, Admiral Peterson stood in the Pentagon briefing room, facing the most important military leaders on the planet. On the wall screen, images from the battle at Zephyr Prime played on repeat. Human fighters dancing through enemy fire, alien ships exploding, the Valiant flying straight into impossible odds and somehow surviving. "Ladies and gentlemen," said General Patricia Hayes, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, "we are no longer alone in the universe, and apparently we're at war." Peterson clicked to the next slide. "The aliens we helped, the Zephyrians, have been sharing intelligence with us. The Vorthok Empire controls nearly 50 star systems. They have enslaved billions of beings, and now they're coming for Earth." "How long do we have?" asked Admiral Susan Clark of the Space Force. "According to our new alien friends, the Emperor's main fleet will arrive in our system within 2 weeks," Peterson replied. "They're bringing 500 warships and enough troops to occupy our entire planet." The room was quiet for a moment. Finally, General Hayes spoke. "How many ships can we put together to defend Earth?" 47, Peterson said. "The Valiant plus every deep space vessel we can pull from exploration and patrol duties. The Zephyrians are sending some ships to help, but they're still rebuilding after years of war." Colonel Nina Parker, who commanded the Marines' new Space Assault Division, leaned forward. "Sir, with respect, 47 ships against 500 sounds like suicide." Peterson smiled grimly. "Colonel, 3 days ago, 1 ship against 50 sounded like suicide too, but we won that battle. And I think I know why." He clicked to a new slide showing comparative data about different worlds. Every species the Vorthoks have conquered comes from what we would call a garden world. Stable weather, gentle seasons, predictable conditions. Their evolution was smooth and peaceful. But Earth... The next slide showed images of hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes, and predators. Earth tries to kill everything that lives on it. We evolved in chaos. We learned to survive disasters that would wipe out entire civilizations on other worlds. We don't just adapt to changing conditions. We expect them. Dr. Amy Watson, who had been promoted to head of alien relations after the battle, stood up. The intelligence we've gathered from captured Vorthok soldiers confirms this. Their homeworld is harsh compared to most alien planets, but it's still more predictable than Earth. They evolved to be perfect predators in a stable environment. We evolved to survive in hell. General Hayes looked thoughtful. So you're saying our disadvantages are actually advantages? Exactly, Peterson said. They have better technology, more ships, more soldiers. But they think like predators who have never faced real competition. We think like prey animals who became hunters by learning to turn every disadvantage into a weapon. Over the next 10 days, Earth became a fortress. Every orbital station was armed with the most powerful weapons human engineers could build. The moon's hidden military bases came online for the first time since they were built in secret 20 years earlier, and in space docks around Jupiter and Mars. Human ships prepared for the fight of their species' life. But the most important, preparations were happening in the minds of the human crews. Peterson had sent recordings of the Zephyr Prime battle to every ship captain. With one simple message: the enemy expects you to follow the rules. Don't. Captain Greg Adams of the destroyer Phoenix spent hours with his crew practicing maneuvers that would fail any normal military inspection. They learned to fly their ship upside down, sideways, and in spirals that would make most people sick. Combat medic Julie Evans trained her medical team to keep treating wounded soldiers even while their ship was spinning out of control. On the assault carrier Liberty, Colonel Parker drilled her Marines in zero-gravity combat tactics that had never been tried before. Sergeant Chris Morgan, a veteran of Earth's worst urban warfare, taught his soldiers how to fight inside enemy ships using improvised weapons and guerrilla tactics. Captain Paul Henderson of the heavy cruiser Independence worked with engineer Sam Foster to modify their ship's engines so they could accelerate and decelerate faster than physics said was safe. They knew the modifications might destroy their own ship, but they also knew that predictable ships were dead ships against Vorthok forces. When the enemy fleet finally arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system, it was like nothing humanity had ever seen. 500 ships, each one larger than any human vessel, arranged in perfect formation. At their center was the Dominator Emperor Zarthuk's flagship, a ship so large it could be seen with the naked eye from Earth's surface. The Emperor himself stood on his bridge looking at the small blue and green planet that had caused him so much trouble. "It looks so peaceful," he said to his officers. "Hard to believe such dangerous creatures evolved there." "My Emperor," said his fleet commander, "our sensors show only 47 enemy ships. They are positioned around their planet in a defensive formation. Only 47. The Emperor laughed, a sound like breaking glass. They learned nothing from their victory. "Very well. All ships advance to orbital bombardment range. We'll destroy their military forces first, then their cities. Then every living thing on the planet's surface." The massive Vorthok fleet began moving toward Earth in perfect geometric formation. Every ship maintained exact distance from the others. Every gun was aimed at a predetermined target. Every soldier was ready to follow orders that had worked for 3 centuries of conquest. What they didn't know was that 47 human ships were about to teach the galaxy a new definition of the word impossible. Major Alex Turner, piloting a damaged fighter that should have been scrapped weeks ago, looked at the approaching alien armada and spoke for every human in the solar system. "All right, you bastards," he said into his radio. "Let's show you what happens when you mess with Deathworlders." The battle for Earth lasted 18 hours and changed the galaxy forever. Major Alex Turner's damaged fighter was the first to engage the enemy fleet. Instead of waiting for orders, he accelerated straight toward the massive Vorthok formation, weaving between their ships like a minnow swimming through a school of sharks. His fighter had barely any weapons left. But Turner had something the aliens couldn't understand: absolute determination to protect his home. He flew as crippled ship directly into the engine port of a Vorthok cruiser. The explosion was visible from Earth's surface, and it sent a message to every human in the solar system: if you're going to die, make it count. The human fleet attacked in waves that made no sense to Vorthok military thinking. Captain Adams brought the Phoenix in from above the enemy formation, flying upside down and firing in all directions. When his weapons ran out of ammunition, he used his ship as a battering ram, smashing through the hull of an enemy destroyer before ejecting his crew in escape pods. Colonel Parker's Marines did something no alien military had ever attempted. They used boarding pods to land on enemy ships while the battle was still raging. Sergeant Morgan led assault teams through the corridors of Vorthok vessels, hiding room by room with weapons they had never seen before. The alien soldiers were bigger and stronger than humans, but they had never faced enemies who fought with such desperate creativity. "Use everything," Morgan shouted to his men as they battled through a Vorthok command ship. Light fixtures, wall, panels, their own weapons turned against them. "These guys don't know how to fight dirty." Engineer Foster proved him right by turning the ship's own gravity system into a weapon. He reversed the artificial gravity in different sections, sending Vorthok soldiers flying into the ceiling while human Marines, trained in zero-gravity combat, moved freely through the chaos. But the most important battle was happening on the bridge of the Dominator, where Emperor Zarthuk watched his perfect fleet falling apart. For the first time in his long life, he felt something that no Vorthok leader had experienced in 3 centuries: fear. "How many ships have we lost?" he demanded. His fleet commander's voice shook as he replied, 143. "My Emperor, no. The humans are destroying our vessels faster than we can replace them. And they're making our own ships fight against us." The Emperor's claws dug deep gouges in his command throne. Explain, "The human boarding parties are taking control of our ships and turning their weapons on the rest of the fleet. They're using our own vessels as weapons against us." Captain Henderson of the Independence had just proven this point by capturing a Vorthok battleship and using its massive guns to attack 3 other enemy vessels. His crew, led by the brilliant engineer Foster, had figured out the alien control systems in less than 20 minutes. "It's all about pattern recognition," Foster explained to his amazed crewmates. "These aliens think in straight lines. Their computer systems are logical, but simple. They never expected anyone to hack them from the inside." Dr. Watson, monitoring the battle from Earth's orbital command center, watched the impossible happen. The human fleet was not just surviving against overwhelming odds, they were winning. More importantly, they were teaching their alien allies how to win Zephyrian ships. Fighting alongside humans for the first time began copying human tactics. Captain Veltar, who had survived the battle at Zephyr Prime, led a squadron of alien vessels in a coordinated attack that would have been impossible before they met humans. Instead of following predictable flight patterns, the Zephyrian ships moved like a flock of birds, constantly changing direction and confusing the Vorthok gunners. "We are learning," Veltar transmitted to Admiral Peterson. "Your people have shown us that war is not about following rules. It is about breaking them." The turning point came when Peterson himself, commanding the Valiant, led a final desperate assault on the Emperor's flagship. The Dominator was the largest ship in the galaxy, bristling with enough weapons to destroy entire planets. No sane military commander would attack it directly. Peterson was not feeling particularly sane. "All ships, this is Admiral Peterson," he broadcast to the entire human fleet. "We're going to end this war the way humans end all wars, by doing something so crazy that nobody sees it coming." The remaining human ships, battered and barely functional, formed up behind the Valiant for a direct assault on the Dominator. They flew straight at the massive enemy vessel, using the debris from destroyed ships as cover. When they were close enough to see the alien soldiers through the viewport windows, Peterson gave the order that ended the Vorthok Empire. "All ships, ramming speed. We're going down, we're taking them with us. But humans, as the galaxy was, learning had a gift for survival that bordered on supernatural. At the last second, the human ships scattered in different directions, releasing every weapon they had directly into the Dominator's command structure. The massive flagship, built to withstand attacks from other predictable aliens, had no defense against enemies who were willing to sacrifice themselves for victory. Emperor Zarthuk died when the Valiant's final missile punched through his throne room window. His last thought was confusion at how primitive creatures had defeated the greatest military force in galactic history. With their emperor dead and their fleet scattered, the remaining Vorthok forces surrendered. For the first time in 3 centuries, the galaxy was free from their reign of terror. 3 months later, Admiral Peterson stood in the rebuilt Zephyrian council chambers, wearing a uniform that represented not just Earth, but a new organization called the Galactic Defense Alliance. Around him sat representatives from dozens of worlds that had been freed from Vorthok rule. "The question before us today," said Chancellor Yathera, who now served as the Council's president, "is how we prevent something like the Vorthok Empire from ever rising again." Peterson looked around the chamber at faces both human and alien. In the past months, human military advisors had spread throughout the galaxy, teaching other species the art of defensive warfare. But more than that, they had taught them something the galaxy had forgotten, that sometimes the only way to protect peace was to be ready for war. "The answer is simple," Peterson said. "We stay ready, we train together, share our knowledge and our strength, and we make sure that anyone who tries to hurt innocent people knows they'll have to face all of us." Dr. Watson, now serving as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council, stood up. "The humans have a saying," she told the assembled. "Aliens, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. We learned that lesson on our harsh homeworld, and we're willing to teach it to anyone who wants to learn." In the months that followed, the galaxy changed in ways no one had imagined. Human-designed ships built for speed and unpredictability, rather than raw power, began appearing in alien fleets. Human military academies opened on a dozen worlds, teaching alien soldiers tactics that emphasized creativity over rigid discipline. More importantly, the peaceful species of the galaxy learned that they didn't have to be victims. The Zephyrians developed new technologies for planetary defense. The Krell built ships that could fight as well as trade. Even the small furry beings from the Whisker worlds learned to defend their sacred trees with weapons as well as diplomacy. But the greatest change was in how the galaxy thought about Earth and its people. The small blue planet that no one had heard of 6 months ago was now known throughout the stars as the homeworld of the Deathworlders, beings who had turned a planet's attempts to kill them into the strength needed to save the galaxy. When new threats appeared from the unknown regions of space, the response was always the same. The alien worlds would send their fastest ships toward Earth with a simple message: "Please send help. The Deathworlders know how to fight." And humans, being humans, always answered the call.